Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today. I will do that in my function as a director of an institute with a long historical tradition. And in order to start this picture, which turns out to be a quite complicated one, I have this first slide, which gives you a bit of an impression where we are. So basically, we are located right next to what used to be the Berlin Wall, and some of you may have heard about the Bridge of Spies. Also, a nice movie on that. The sites where the Potsdam conference were, and also the housing of the three main powers, Stalin, Churchill, and Truman, very nearby. The site itself has a collection of buildings of different epochs. The original one built in 1913, extended by a mirror telescope, at that time one of the largest in Europe, in 1924, and then quite a bit of construction going on after reunification with these two buildings in 2000 and 2011, and we are not even stopping now. Actually, we are currently planning, or actually started digging for a new building, which will be inaugurated hopefully in 2024. But possibly more challenging than this overall picture is when I show you that basically the whole area is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Prussian Parks and Castle, and that will put up some particularly constraints regarding building activities and what you may do to protect the environment. And as we will see in a minute or so, basically protecting the cultural heritage, protecting the environment, and protecting the climate is not always going in sync, but you at some point, as in every complicated system, run into mutual conflicts. Besides that, we also have these two famous buildings here, and the Einstein Tower is a particularly nice one, but in terms of maintaining it and operating it, I would say nightmare is a euphemism. It really is a continuing construction area. So the first main message I would like to give is usually there is not the one big thing you can do. You basically have to resort that you have to do many, many smaller things. Each individual thing doesn't even sometimes look worth pursuing, but at the end, it's only that how you can substantially decrease your environmental footprint. We also live in the reality, I think most of the astronomical institutions and the different flavor, I think, depends from country to country, but at the end, usually we are subject to public spending regulations. So we are usually forced to go for the low-cost solution. We're usually forced to go with the lowest bidder when we build something. And I think the most serious part is that your construction budget and your operation budget usually comes from different budget lines and often different funding sources. So saving money in operation is not in the interest of the party who provides the funding for say, setting up the building. And this is, I think, is something which is actually quite complicated and quite difficult to overcome. But there are other things, and I show this at this one example of this building here, which we inaugurated in 2000, the Schwarzschild House. And you see this nice large roof area, and you would say, okay, wouldn't that be great to add solar panels on top of that roof? You would have quite some area. It's in a nice direction, south to southwest, where you get most of the sunshine in this area. But we are part, as I said, on the UNESCO World Heritage. And it's the park environment that is protected, which makes it particularly complicated, because basically, whenever something can be seen, you have a problem. This is usually called Sichtachsen in Germany, so viewing axis. It's a big topic. You can do an election campaign in the local state election in Brandenburg with words like Sichtachsenfaschismus or viewing axis fascism. So it's a highly political debated topic. And as I said, when it can be seen from somewhere in the park, you have a problem in putting in some action. And also with environmental protection, it's not always in sync. For example, we could say, okay, we solve this problem with the park, we're adding solar panels to the roof, and then the environmental agency comes and says, no, you need to have a green roof. You built a building on something where formerly was green land, so you have to put a green roof. You have to put plants on the roof, not solar panels. So you see, different viewpoints, all well thought and well reasoned, basically can lead to some contradictions. So what have we done? Just a few examples of the past, say, 15 years or so. I think the standard law is what we also do right now with our new building, is trying to do the solar power by putting the solar panels in an area where you cannot see them from the park, using geothermal heating, using passive cooling wherever possible, and so on and so forth. I think that is a standard basically everyone does when he's constructing a new home in private life. I think there are lots of things you can do these days. Then there are targets of opportunities, and sometimes I think you have to be creative. For example, I showed you the Einstein Tower. We just got a foundation, money from the Wüstenrot Foundation for a renovation, and we basically will use some of that to improve the insulation of that building in some parts. 10 years ago, after the financial crisis, there was a stimulus package, and we basically put in a bid in the stimulus package. We got a loafer station out of it, but also we got the roof insulation of the historic main building and new and more efficient gas burners. They're still burning gas. It's very difficult to come around that in a historical building, but certainly they are much more efficient than what we had in the building before. So my main message here is be creative. Sometimes there are options, they are not immediately transparent at the beginning. And I also think we all can do more. I think we just do a little bit here, maybe just some ideas. I think we all can do quite a bit more if we really want to protect the climate and environment. So let me give my last example, which I have to say I'm a bit proud of. Basically a building we got in 2011, so it was constructed between 2007 and 2011. Basically, the need we had was that we need additional office space. And in Germany, office space usually comes with no AC, has some disadvantages during hot summers like 2019. And we also need space for labs, in particular optical labs with some high power optical lasers, and also compute and data serving clusters. And these rooms need to be air conditioned. So how can you combine this in the most, or in a more energy efficient way? So what we did is, first of all, the building, as you see from the color, had to be a bit camouflaged to reduce the impression as seen from the park. And also half of the building is underground, so to minimize the part you can see. And then the idea was to use activated core, so-called activated core elements. So we basically thermally couple the whole building, mainly the ceilings, to the air conditioning of the cluster room and the laser lab. And we use it in both temperature ways, so warm water and cold water at the same time. So what does that mean? In winter, we basically heat with the dissipated heat of the computers and the lasers. And just to give an example, so we only have a very small burner, gas burner, in cases we really get some very sub-zero temperatures, like -15, -20 degrees or so. But in a regular winter, we only need little heating. If you go to a warm winter like the one in 2019, 2020, we actually did not have to use any additional heating at all. We basically heated this exclusively with the dissipated heat from the computers and from the lasers. But it's not only an advantage in winter, it's also an advantage in summer. Basically, by running the cold water through the building, you lower the office temperatures just by a few degrees. And I think this is, from, say, personal perception, this is what you actually want. You don't want to have, say, 35 degrees outside and 20 degrees inside, then you're freezing. You just want to have the inside a few degrees cooler than the outside. That usually gives a more pleasant climate. And when we do that, of course, we need some additional air conditioning, but because the temperature spread between the outgoing and the backflowing water is higher, the air conditioning system works at a more efficient operating point, and therefore, to some extent, this cooling of the overall building partially become for free. So at the end, with a relatively minimum investment of energy, first of all, we save considerable amount in the winter, and in the summer, we operate everything and keep the building at more pleasant temperatures. And that brings me to my conclusion. I think the three main points, again, I think there's not the one thing you can do. You have to do many small things. You have to be creative, and call to all of us, let's do more. Thank you very much.